Welcome everyone, Magnus here, and tonight I wanted to talk about cameras and upgrading your gear. Now, I totally apologize if you hear like background noise, for example. I've got the windows open because it's unbelievably hot in this room, but I just wanted to start a live stream and kick it up with you guys so that we could talk about something that's been in my head and hopefully get some feedback, if not live, in the comments below after this is reposted. So thank you for joining me if you're here live with me, and if not, it's cool. It's totally all right. So what I've got for this presentation, and I want to make this kind of at least a weekly thing. I'm testing out Wednesday nights, but I might move it one night or another. So, but I want to just basically test out a live show at a regular basis so that you guys know it's coming. I don't have to send notifications, or you'll get notifications, but whether you get it or not, you can at least expect it. So as of right now, this camera show is going to be tested on Wednesday nights. So definitely look for my show at least once a week on Wednesday if you miss this one and you want to catch the next one. But without further ado, let's definitely get right into it. So today I wanted to talk about the fact that there's a new camera coming out, and I've got enough cameras. I'm actually recording this on a 5D Mark IV, or live streaming it on the 5D Mark IV, directly connected to my computer. And then I've got a Samsung NX1 that's actually sitting on a tripod there, another Samsung NX1 right here, a Panasonic GH5. So I mentioned Canon, Samsung, Panasonic, a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, so this is Blackmagic, and then another Canon, a Canon 6D, and I'm like reaching around this microphone just to get it because I've got it all laid out in front of me. But what I want to talk about is the practicality. This is where we're going to start off today. Why would I sell a camera to buy a new one? Why would you want to? And how did I end up with so many? What's the purpose? So let's first off with the camera that I want to buy. It is the Canon R5. It hasn't even been released yet. And there have been rumored prices anywhere between $6,700, which was confirmed as not true, down to probably the price of a new 5D Mark IV, like when it came out, like $3,500, that price range. But there is no official price, so we don't know what it's going to be yet. And then that is the whole like excitement that builds up to getting that camera. And then I was also thinking of getting an R6, which is like one grade down from that. And in order to do that, you need money, and these cameras cost thousands of dollars. So if I'm not profiting and making money off of these cameras, it's almost like like 2 months rent or something like that just to buy one. But thankfully I own this many cameras because I actually use them for profit. So these cameras have been an investment, not just an excuse to splurge on the latest and greatest tech and then put it on my wall. That would just be the worst. So the reason I'm upgrading to the R5 is because it has some of the best features that I've ever seen in a DSLR mirrorless, not DSLR, but let's say mirrorless body, with all the video features that I would ever want, including photography features that I would ever want as well. For example, the 5D Mark IV, which I'm using right now, has been my workhorse camera, probably one of my most used cameras, that and the Samsung, because of their ability to function under two completely different scenarios. One for video and recording high quality video with great autofocus, and the other is that when I gotta just take pictures, and I get told a lot, they see me with a camera, and rather than asking me for a video, they'll mostly offer, hey, you got a camera, can you take all these professional pictures? So it almost kind of forces me to become a photographer. But I see that it's two ways of making money and earning money and then paying for this gear that is awesome. That's why I have so many, because they basically have paid for themselves. But if you want to do the best with your equipment, you don't want to be hampered by limitations. And that is what I'm trying to avoid. And this camera seems to remove a lot of limitations that all the cameras that I have right now could be hampered by, with one or two missing things. So that's the purpose, and that's the reason. I'm drinking seltzer water right now. It's unbelievably hot in this room. How do you like my haircut? How do you like today's haircut? With this whole situation going on, I still have hair issues and whatever, but it's nice. We'll get a cut again. So, but right now, let's move right into it. So, each camera that I have is great, but it has a flaw that the R5 will hopefully correct. Now I'm going to go through each camera one by one that I have here. Then I'm going to go through what I like about it and what I don't like about it and why I would consider selling it. And then we'll look up the prices together on social media, like not social media, but we'll look up the prices on like eBay and Amazon, what I could sell them for, and take that all into consideration before I sell it. So tonight we're going to start with the Samsung NX1. Now, why I would consider selling this camera? Well, I have two of them. So I can get rid of one and still have another Samsung NX1. But the pros why I would like this camera, which is definitely a reason why anyone else would want to buy it from me, is that it records 4K at 30 frames per second using the full sensor. Now the sensor is like a mid-size sensor. It's not a full frame. It's like APS-C, so it's slightly smaller. For those that are new to photography, APS-C is about, at least on a Samsung version, 1.5 times smaller than a full frame. And a full frame camera is a camera that simulates a 35 millimeter slide of film back in those days. So it's kind of big. So picture this a little bit smaller. And sensor size is important when it comes to the variability and the ability of gathering more light into your actual photo with lenses that are great, but lenses that are not so great are still going to perform better on a full frame camera than they would on a smaller sensor, without getting into too many technical details. So 4K at 30 frames per second max, using a 6.5K sensor. So it downsamples the sensor from 6.5K down to 4K. So the amount of detail that you get off of this camera is incredible. You're getting pretty much oversampled and down to 6K. So it's very sharp, and the quality is very high, even though this camera came out in around late 2014. So high quality 4K with an HEVC codec, which means highly compressed codec, that still doesn't sacrifice quality for its compression. So you get great quality at smaller file sizes, which means that you can have a cheaper SD card. Like I have this really cheap PNY. I know the camera might not focus on it. Oh, there it is. So this really cheap PNY SD card, 256 gigabytes, didn't cost me that much, but it can record at full quality, pro quality 4K on the Samsung NX1 without an issue. So that in itself is great. You can record forever on this camera, and awesome. So, and then it's got full HD up to 120 frames per second with the ability to have autofocus and audio record at 120 frames per second. So you can record normal and then slow yourself down by 5 times, 5 or 6 times slow-mo. 40% speed, let's just call it, if you're recording at 24 frames per second. And then speed it up again and still have audio and autofocus working. So that in itself is amazing. The autofocus is incredible. It does a great job at focusing whatever catches its attention in front of the lens. Though its face tracking is not the best, it's still pretty incredible and pretty smooth for autofocus. And I mean, what am I selling this camera? Well, I might. So definitely pay attention if you're interested, if this camera is the one that I decide to sell. Also, the 4K, the color signs in it, like especially like when you're recording and you set the white balance appropriately, when you're editing and post, holy cow, these images look absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So I'm totally happy with this camera. And it's got a mic jack, it's got an audio jack. You can charge via USB and USB, it's micro USB that you can charge. So, and I bought an external charger as well, so I would choose sell that with it. So it's not only external charging through USB, but also through actually a separate charger. So that's very convenient. And because I installed a hack on it, it doesn't have a 30-minute time limit. You can actually record up to about 75 minutes before your file corrupts, and then you lose it. So you better stop it like within an hour. And like all of this stuff that this NX, oh, should I sell it? I'm still considering it. And the what else am I forgetting? It's a single card slot, so that's a shame. It's a UHS 2 card slot, but it's still single. And the bit rate, thanks to the hack, could be increased. Traditionally, the bit rate on the NX1 is limited on its like highest level, on its Pro, to 80 megabits per second. Now, that also takes into consideration the fact that you're recording HEVC, so H.265. So you're getting higher quality, probably double what an H.264 file, or what a traditional camera would do with, let's say, 160 megabits. You're getting that with 80 megabits per second. However, with the hack that I installed, you have the ability to increase that maximum bit rate. So I increased it on actually my NX1s, because I have fast enough cards, to 120 megabits per second. With the HEVC codec at 120 megabits per second on this camera, your footage will look butter. That's all I can say. So great camera, great all-around camera. On this camera, I've actually got a 50 to 150 f2.8 lens, which is 2.8 f2.8 S lens, image stabilization, awesome, great quality lens. This is actually the best lens I own, period. Out of all the lenses I own, between Canon, I had a micro four thirds lens, Panasonic, and this lens, that's the best lens I own. So that 50 to 150 S lens 2.8, holy smoke, that whole combination will is just amazing. So now, if I decide to sell it, why would I sell it? Number one, as amazing as it is, I have two of them. So I'm already getting that quality. Am I being greedy having two Samsungs rather than one? Well, it made sense off of shoots where I'm doing multi-camera shoot and I have the same camera, so having two NX1s made total sense. But I also have two Canons, and if I'm upgrading to another Canon, I'm going to have three Canons. So it's making that library more powerful. And because the new R5 is going to record 8K, 4K at 120 frames per second, great color science, two card slots, I'm not going to miss much. So I think it's almost worth the sacrifice. So now that we've seen that, let's see what we can get for it. And I'm just going to, as an example, use Amazon and eBay to see what an NX1 and then what that lens will get me. All right, so I'm going to switch over to eBay. And now I searched Samsung NX1, and from what I see here on eBay, geez, okay, the Samsung NX1, when I originally bought it, was $1,500, $1,500. Now, new, granted, I can't really find it new anywhere, so I'm not surprised that the price went up to $2,700 new. This person with this whole set, $8,500. Okay, this seems a bit more reasonable. $1,600 for this whole set. That's more at release price. Another $2,700 here. $1,100 with this whole set. Now I question on whether the battery was Samsung batteries that he's including there, because you don't want to use third-party batteries. I have like 3 third-party batteries with the Samsung NX1 and it has not been good. They've actually been very glitchy on me. So $900. $900 seems to be one of the cheapest prices I see here. And then it starts to tail. Oh, camera with this lens, probably not in great quality, but $500. Mine is practically new. Mine has hardly any wear and tear on it. So I'd say anywhere between 600 to like $800 seems to be what I could potentially get off of the Samsung NX1. So now I'm going to go to Amazon and do the same search and see what I get off of Amazon. So Amazon seems to get no price here. NX30 is available. NX1 black, no price there. I'm gonna actually have to probably click on that to see if I can see any prices. So I'll click on like see all buying options. Okay, $1,200. That doesn't seem. This looks like eBay will get you a better deal. That's the NX30. Let's see if I can click on this one. $2,729 if I add to cart. Now that's a price brand new. So if I had this still in its original box, I would have damn near doubled my money. So that's kind of incredible. Practically double my money. Filter by completed sold listings only. See market price. All right, I'll do that. Is completed sold listings only. Okay, let's do that in eBay. Filter by. I'm sorry, I didn't see that comment until I clicked out. Completed sold list only. I do not see where I can do that. Left side. Okay, left side. I'm not too familiar with eBay to be totally. Type digital specified features, model, brand, condition, new, all listings. I think I'm gonna just do like buy it now and mirrorless. That way it kind of simplified it. But anyway, moving on. It looks like I'm just gonna kind of move on from here. Sorry about that. Again, I want to keep it quick, but on the bottom of the filter list. Sorry, I can't see your comment while I'm actually searching, so I would have just followed you. Check boxes at bottom left. All right, I'll look into checking those boxes in the bottom left. Authentically. All right, sold items. I got what I needed. Still a similar price range. Actually, some for $500 that I'm seeing here. A couple of bags and stuff like that. But similar price range, but actually closer to $900. But that one lowest one was like $500 that I got. So thank you for that. But it looks like I think that NX1, let's take into the consideration anywhere between $500 to $900 in this used condition. But the other thing I'm curious about is the actual lens. because the lens itself is a nice, very nice, hard to find lens. So I'm searching actually through eBay first and seeing if I can actually find this particular lens and at what price. So switching over to eBay for this Samsung lens. This first one, this is the lens that I have. It's about $1,000. This one, $900. This is not the lens. And I could probably get, in combination, probably 16. No, it's not easy to find here. But I could probably get a good $1,600 maybe for both. So $1,600 if the rumored price of the R5 is $3,500. I'm almost halfway there. I'm gonna check Amazon for that, see if actually the Amazon would actually give me a similar price with this particular lens, a 50 to 150 S lens. I'll cut back to that camera angle. S lens OIS. I should have put Samsung because then I'm gonna get others. And I do not get the lens at all. Granted, my search was a little weird. Let me just type Samsung lens, see what I get. I was checking Amazon before and it wasn't exactly popular. If it's even on here, 50 to 200. No. Let's see, 2.8 to no. Does it have manufacturer? Samsung. I should have just filtered by that brand. Not even listed on Amazon. So eBay seems to be the best place to actually see what I'd get. In total, $1,600 to give up all those cool features on the Samsung. But let's move on. Enough with this one. Not a bad price. Moving on. And now, unfortunately, we move to a very popular camera for YouTubers, for others. And that camera is the Panasonic GH5. GH5 was released in early 2017. I actually bought the camera pretty much upon release, but I was very critical of this camera shortly before it came out because I was concerned that with all those great features that it was touted to have, there was something suspicious about the camera's autofocus. That was before, that was before it was even released. I was concerned that a lot of these YouTubers at the time, I was relatively new in the camera space. I had been doing my thing for a few months before the GH5 came out. So YouTubers were touting, oh, this is great, autofocus is great, this and that's great. But when I did my research, there was something a little off about everybody who was promoting the GH5 as the next greatest thing. But it did excite me. I definitely did want it because, let's go over the good features on why this camera was an awesome buy or potentially good buy. Panasonic GH5 has in-body image stabilization. Awesome. Panasonic GH5 has 4K 60, not just 4K 30, but 4K 60. It has the ability to upgrade your camera to Vlog to get as much dynamic range as you possibly can per images in 10-bit internal. So 10-bit internal 4K. That's awesome. Now it was 4K 30, 4K 60 was 8-bit, and I think it's actually 10-bit now. I haven't even turned on this camera in a while, but but let me check. The amount of recording modes that this camera offers is just insane. Absolutely insane. Yeah, it does 4K 10-bit 422 internal at 60 frames per second. Wait, no, that's full HD. I was wrong. No 4K 10-bit for 60 frames per second, but it does it for the lower resolution modes. So that's my mistake, but still great. That means when you're editing in post, that you can really push the colors pretty far and get that exact look that you want from this camera. It's got great battery life for a mirrorless camera. It has the ability to attach an XLR adapter so you can get even better pristine audio off the top. It has dual, of course I knocked over the cover, so there's the sensor right there. It's a micro 4/3 sensor, so it's the smallest sensor in a camera that I have. So it also has so many video settings. It's got dual card slots, so 2 card slots, not just one, which is, and they're UHS 2, so they're very fast. And then pretty much full HDMI support, USB-C connection, so you could connect it directly to your computer, though it doesn't charge off of there, and a microphone jack and a headphone jack. And it's got the moneymaker of all, a flip screen, right? And if you're doing vlog type of productions, having a flip screen as well, it almost seemed like the perfect vlogging camera. Now what I'm going to do right now is pick up that little adapter. You're gonna see my little light in the background. Because if I plan to sell this camera, I'm definitely not going to trivialize that little sensor. So, okay, so those are the great things about the GH5. So why would I consider selling such a camera that's perfect for video? Well, perfect for video, but for photos, I mean, it's crazy fast when you autofocus with this camera to actually get photos. But that smaller sensor has I've never been a fan of the photos that you get from the GH5. So it's basically video for me. And it's like 20 megapixels, which megapixels is not everything, of course, but when you have a low amount of megapixels and you have a smaller sensor, sure, you have the ability to attach a Metabone speed booster and make it act like closer to a full frame, like a 1.2 times crop. But at that point, why didn't you just buy a full frame? Well, because it's more expensive. Yeah, so it's neither here nor there, but great camera. But let me tell you why I consider selling it. Of all the cameras that I have, including my Canon 6D right here, I've used the GH5 the least. 4K 60 is great. I don't use it all the time. I don't have to. It does 1080p 180 frames per second. I use slow-mo, but not all the time, and occasionally. And the slow motion, unfortunately, not counting the 60 frames per second in 4K, but the 180 frames per second in 1080 does not record audio and does not have autofocus. It's completely turned off. Speaking of autofocus, the autofocus that it does have has gradually improved, but has been abysmal, at least when you compare it to the Samsung NX1, when you compare it to the 5D Mark IV. It just, depth by defocus, autofocus, which is contrast based, is, in my opinion, not as good as the autofocus that you get off of Canon, off of Sony, off of Samsung. So that is not even the biggest reason why I consider selling the GH5. I considered selling the GH5 mostly because of its color signs. Now, that's a subjective opinion, but color signs to me, the image that you get off of your sensor in order to produce whatever you're trying to produce is the most important thing for me. Because when you have, sure, it has image stabilization, but you could figure out other ways to stabilize your shot. Sure, the autofocus is not great. Well, you could use manual focus, right? You could do all of that. But when you have everything working and then you get the image and then the image looks ugly, not that you can't work around it, but it's a lot more hours to work around. The lack of great autofocus means it'll take me either have a focus puller, or if I'm the one recording, just pull focus myself. A couple seconds, no extra work in post. Like I said, I'm thirsty. But when you get your image back and it looks ugly, there's extra effort involved in post that is just annoying. To match it to other cameras, for example, or just to color correct it so you get a decent looking image. I put out a video not too long ago of a certain kind of presettings tweak that I could apply to the GH5 that get the colors to be beautiful. So you can get there. And then every time I record with the GH5, as long as I have the white balance settings on location exactly the way I want it, I just apply this preset off of Adobe Premiere that I have. Boom, perfect. But the fact that I have to do that is annoying, very annoying. And if heaven forbid I have the wrong white balance settings because I had to pick up and shoot real quick and I didn't think of it, applying that filter probably won't work as well. Not that it's happened, but then having to work around an ugly image. I'm glad it's 10-bit footage because if it wasn't that, then I'd be really frustrating. Now, granted, a lot of other filmmakers, developers absolutely live and die by the GH5 because they've mastered it. And yes, you can master it. But I have a handful of cameras that I didn't have to master to get a great quality image. Granted, I mastered pretty much all my cameras, but the GH5 is the one camera I've given the less amount of attention towards, and is why I'm considering to sell it, basically because of that image quality. So GH5 is a bit more common. Let's see what I can get off of this camera on eBay. Going on eBay now. What's a huge used GH5 get me? 1200, 1600. These look like they're new. Let's see if I could just limit it to GH5. 1200, 1300, $1,000. 1200, 1230, 1300. Again, I don't need to go through all of them, just kind of a rough look. GH, what? This can't be real. All right, guys, I'm seeing a price for buy it now, $199, parts only. Okay, maybe that's why. I almost freaked out. I thought for a second that I was gonna get a GH5. I would have bought it right now. Have two to try to flip it. Anyway, let's keep looking. So the prices for the GH5 seem to be a little bit more attractive than the Panasonic. I mean, than the Samsung. Anywhere from like 900, 800 to 1200, and then some people sell it with bundles with it a little bit more. This defective one, $450. So not bad. Say around 800 to 900. That actually surprises me because I didn't expect it to be that good for that camera. But it is newer than the Samsung NX1, and it's still, unlike the Samsung, which is another flaw of the Samsung, they're no longer making those lenses or those cameras, so picking up new lenses is hard. But if you get a GH5, there's plenty of micro four thirds lenses and plenty of adapters. In fact, you don't see a lens on my GH5 in particular because I use a Metabone speed booster and I use Canon lenses on it. I did own a Panasonic GH5 lens, a really versatile lens. However, I broke it, so can't sell that. Not going to either. So let's look at Amazon, what Amazon would have for the GH5. So Panasonic GH5. And if you guys like agree with me, maybe I should get rid of this one, then just let me know. Let's look at the filters here. I don't want a lens. Am I looking at only lenses? Panasonic. Sorry guys, I'm like only seeing lenses, so I'm saying where's the filter for this? Clear filters. Okay, so Panasonic GH5 1300, 1800, 1400. This is more on the pricier side, but this one seems to be $1,000, and this seems to be new. That's not a bad price at all for a new Panasonic GH5. Holy cow. So I might have to sell on the lower end, probably like $800 or something, which would kind of stink. Oh well. It is what it is. So Panasonic, I do not have any lenses. I wouldn't sell anything else with it besides this, the power adapter, battery. Oh, and I do have a battery pack that you can plug into like a wall outlet so you can record forever, because the Panasonic has no recording limit, which is great. Good feature. Oh well. Moving on. I'm kind of going on for a while now, so I'll try to be quicker for you guys. Freddie Causey says I would keep it used as 800 to 1050. Yep, that's kind of what I saw too. Again, excuse me, choking on my own drink here. The only reason I was considering getting rid of it is because it's gotten the least amount of use. Breathe. Apologize. All right, now we go to the Canon 6D. Now this camera is much older. I think it came out around 2012 or 2013, if I'm not mistaken. The Canon 6D is a full frame, great camera by the way. It's a full frame, more of an entry level camera when Canon released it back in, like, I believe it was 2012. Let's just say it was 2012. So Canon released it as a cheaper alternative to the 5D Mark III, which came out right before then. That way it can get people into the full frame world at a much better discounted price, and then start to pick up their lenses before they upgrade to the 5D or something more expensive. So when it came out, it had a lot of features that were similar to the 5D Mark III, with a few changes, some upgrades, most downgrades. So the 5D Mark III had, I believe, a 23 megapixel sensor. The Canon 6D has about a 20 megapixel sensor. Canon 6D records max 1080p at 30 frames per second, 720p at 60 frames per second, which was similar to the 5D Mark III. The Canon 6D does also include, I believe, an intervalometer, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't know if the 5D had it. Let me actually make sure that I'm not talking out of my butt here, but Yeah, it included an internal intervalometer, which was cool. It has incredible looking uh, Canon color science. It has one SD card slot, which was unfortunate. But unlike the 5D Mark III, the Canon 6D included Wi-Fi connections so that you can actually download your pictures or even take a picture via your phone connecting directly to the Canon 6D without any external adapter necessary. And I believe it also had GPS as well. So you have GPS and Wi-Fi functionality built in where the 5D Mark III did not, which was awesome. Didn't have that many autofocus points, but when all in all in this package, especially in the 6D, it was a great entry level camera. You can get incredible looking footage. You can also download picture profiles, like picture profiles that simulate log, because there is no log footage here, but you can get picture profiles that come really close to actually expanding the dynamic range on the Canon 6D and push colors as much as you possibly can off of the 1080p footage. No autofocus. This was before Canon's infamous or famous dual pixel autofocus, so everything was manual. But when you look at the quality of the 1080p, it was just beautiful. That's what made me fall in love with this camera. And the pictures itself, when you use this camera, it was like maximum 4 frames per second for photos. It was unbelievable. Like the quality, this is what made me like Canon, and the color science. But the last feature that this camera has that actually not even my 5D Mark IV has yet. 5D Mark III had it better, but 6D has it, and it's not licensed by Canon. I think it voids your warranty as well, but it's been well worth the risk. Is that my Canon 6D can do much more than what it was supposed to do, because I installed a custom firmware called Magic Lantern. Magic Lantern actually runs off of an SD card, so it's not really built in the firmware. Like if you switch it with any other SD card, then it won't work. You have to have a specific SD card to use Magic Lantern with the special software in. But when you use Magic Lantern, here are the expanded features you get. You get focus peaking. You get the ability to record RAW. You get expanded dynamic range mode, so you can set the high and low ISO levels and really get a HDR type of footage. You get a special recording crop modes. You can push this camera beyond what it's supposed to do, basically. So many other things. But the ability to record RAW, the ability to have features like monitor your audio and focus peaking, all of that has been so helpful when it comes to, I don't know if you hear a truck outside, so I apologize for that, but all of that has been so helpful when it comes to the Canon 6D. This camera has been damn near untouchable. That's, and then the images that you get out of it are, I mean, I used it on a video not too long ago because I didn't have my 5D with me, and I just fell in love with the camera again. I'm like, oh my gosh, it looks so good. Why don't I use it more often? And it really is a good peak cam if I'm recording with the 5D Mark IV as my A cam. It's just an incredible steal. But why would I get rid of it? Well, no autofocus, as I said, one card slot, limited recording modes. Like I said, it maxes out at 1080p 30 frames per second. And as great as Magic Lantern is, and as great as it is Record RAW, in order for me to record RAW, it takes way too many steps because I've got to reduce the resolution by half to record RAW continuously. And when I record RAW, there's a couple of things I have to do in my computer to convert the footage to be something that's reasonably editable. So that in itself disqualifies this camera from practically using RAW. So it's nice that it has it, but even with my fastest cards, I could not get like full resolution RAW. which is a damn shame because this camera, if it could do RAW at 1080p, I would never get rid of it. Because the SD card slot is a UHS-1 SD card slot, and that's kind of on the slower end, which is sad, but great camera. I've got a 50mm f1.4 lens attached to it right now. But if I look to get rid of this, I would get rid of it with two Canon LPE6 batteries and the body itself. And maybe I'll throw in, and besides this camera strap, I'll throw in an extra camera strap just to make it like a good sale. No lenses though. I'm still keeping my lenses with Canon. So when I'm selling these type of cameras, I'm not getting rid of the lenses. So it looks like the Panasonic GH5 would have been ahead of the race, by the way, when it comes to the most amount of money I can get. But the reason that the NX1 is winning this battle is because I'd be looking to sell it with a lens. And it looks like the combination, I can get close to 1,600. Whereas the Panasonic GH5 itself, I can get around 1,000. We're going to see what a full frame, slightly older camera can get, being that it's the Canon 6D. Quite honestly, I don't expect much at all. I really don't. But hey, we're trying it out, mixing and matching here, right? And I'm getting stuff done with you guys, so thanks for your help. All right, Canon 6D. Canon 6D. Let's see, these filters are fine. Digital cameras. Just the 6D. Let's not get the 6D Mark II. I put just the 6D, and the first thing is 6D Mark II. So used Canon 6D. That's about $560, $570. It is way too much, but that's a lot of things. $650. So this camera seems to be around the $550, $600 mark, it looks like, for body only. It was an international version. So I'm comfortable to sell it around $500 to $600 mark. I'd probably sell it closer to the $500 mark because, quite honestly, the 6D that I have has been pretty much beaten up. Not bad. I mean, it's still, first of all, I haven't taken that many shots, like photos with it. I've taken probably over 10,000 photos, but for as long as I've had it, which was slightly right after launch, that's not a lot. But it has some wear on the bottom. Actually, too, this screen, I actually completely cracked the screen. Completely. It was just completely cracked. So I replaced it with a sort of like a Gorilla Glass screen, which is actually higher quality than what the camera came with. So there's no scratches that you can see right here. It works pretty good. Oh, and that's the screen for Magic Lantern that comes up that you can start then, of course, switching the settings and extra options that get you whatever you want. Awesome. So let's look at Amazon to see if they have any spare Canon 6Ds on their site. So, but $500 seems to be what the reasonable price would be. Now I know I'm going to have to filter here because they're probably going to give me a lot of Mark IIs. But I don't see a filter here for that specific model type. Just features. So I'll just scroll through what's over here and then we'll move on to the next camera. So 6D Mark II, $1,200. The original 6D, over $800. It seems that Amazon is way off the mark when it comes to prices. I mean, look at this. This comes with a lens, but damn near $600. $1,200 just for a starter bundle. $800. Yeah, I'm going to stick to eBay when it comes to this camera and probably go around $500. It's a little bit beaten up. But I'd throw in, like I said, an extra battery, magic lantern, which I think increases the value, and an extra strap. So what do I have left? Well, all of these. The last camera I'm going to talk about is the one I'm using, but next to last, can't believe I'm throwing this out here, is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Well, let me tell you why I like this camera, why I bought this camera, while I still use this camera. In fact, I've done a lot of stuff with this camera, and I still consider it to be one of, if not the best cameras I've ever owned. So why am I thinking of selling it? Well, I don't know. Well, here are the good reasons. Okay, so the good reasons why I bought this camera. Where do I start? I first heard about this camera when it was going to be released in 2018. It was supposed to be later 2018, but they announced it, I believe, in the National Association of Broadcasters conference in early 2018, and it was a game changer. Blackmagic Design, if you don't know, they designed software for the longest time before they actually got into designing hardware like cameras. They actually had DaVinci Resolve. Before they had DaVinci Resolve, they had other software. They purchased DaVinci Resolve and purchased Fusion to merge it into one editing software. And they were basically like a pro editor's kind of gear house where you can buy controls, dials, and switches just to be able to color grade better. And DaVinci Resolve is amazing for color grading. It's editing software. It's free. Give it a try. DaVinci Resolve works awesome. With the upgraded version, which is not that much, it's $300 US, you get even more features unlocked. But you can totally edit amazing videos with the free version. So that's DaVinci Resolve. Once they started to design cameras like the original Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, like the Ursa Mini 4K, the Ursa Pro, a lot of Ursa cameras. I don't know all of them, but they're an amazing camera maker, and they have this philosophy of making cinema grade cameras at more affordable prices. And I think they hit it straight out of the park when they released the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Such a long name for a camera. It took me like 6 months to even learn the damn name because I'd forget it every time I was live on a video. So this camera, why I caught my eye. I had just purchased the GH5 a year prior, right? So GH5 was amazing. It had 60 frames per second, 4K, and that's what really caught my attention of it. But a little disappointed with the usability of it and kind of other features. But we've talked about the GH5. But this had the 60 frames per second 4K. This has the 1080p at 120 frames per second, though the GH5 has a little bit better, 180 frames per second. This has the ability to not only record to an SD card slot, but an expanded CFast card slot, which is a slightly faster type of reader, and you can record directly to an SSD off of the USB-C port, which means faster editing. You record to a hard drive, connect it right to your computer, and then start editing right away. For those large files types, that's a lifesaver. So I was like, oh, that caught my attention. But then the recording types, you could record RAW and ProRes, two very desired file types when it comes to video. ProRes is a breeze to edit with, no matter if you're using DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere, or Final Cut Pro. But then the RAW recording, which was something that I was into, internal RAW recording, both compressed and uncompressed, internally. And if I don't have a CFast card slot, I could do that bigger RAW recording through the SSD and get a fast enough speed to get exactly what I needed, uncompressed. Beautiful. Now, upon release, when it came out, it was Cinema DNG RAW, which means it's like literally a raw picture for every frame. So 24 frames per second, which is traditionally the slowest frames per second that cameras nowadays will record. 24 frames per second would be 24 raw photos per second, which is huge. The files would be unbelievable. This would think for that uncompressed footage, you would need 500 megabytes per second. Now, 500 megabytes per second are a megabyte is about 8 times larger than a megabit. The 5D Mark IV in comparison, when it does 4K, does 500 megabits per second. This was recording raw at 500 megabytes per second. Unheard of. But I didn't have to buy really expensive media to record that. Again, sorry for the motorcycles if you hear them, and I have the window up and people are loud in my neighborhood. So anyway, 500 megabytes per second. It was too large, very large. But again, for the type of recording I did, it was just fine because I wasn't going too crazy and I was just learning about the camera. But then a short time later, after I already owned the camera, because with the RAW and the 60 frames per second and the amazing color science and the image off of Blackmagic and the 13 stops of dynamic range, I was like, yes, give it to me now. And I got it around late October, if I'm not mistaken, of 2018, which was nice. I pre-ordered it ahead of time, but I got it sooner than I expected, which was great. So later, Blackmagic actually changed how it records RAW from Cinema DNG, which were huge files, to something that is called B-RAW, or Blackmagic RAW, basically. And that type of compression of the RAW, it kind of makes the camera do some of the work to debayer the footage and get it to a format that makes it easier to edit with, but still lets you adjust your ISO settings, your white balance, and a number of other features in post, and actually has some highlight recovery, which means, again, the benefits of RAW, but file sizes that are like traditional video files that let you just really expand and get great quality in your footage. I mean, again, if I'm talking a lot about these cameras because I know a lot about them, I got to know these cameras. I did a video previously, which you could definitely check out on my channel as well, comparing the 5D Mark IV's most compressed 12:1 B-RAW files to the 4K footage of the 5D Mark IV, which records at 500 megabits per second. That bitrate of 500 megabits per second was higher than the Blackmagic RAW footage, and yet I was still able to record RAW with no issue. Freddie, if you're out of here, hope to catch you as well. I'll be back in a week with another live stream. So thanks for joining. But again, to record that footage, get that high quality at a better compression than MJPEG and get more flexibility, sold. Long story short, this camera has versatility. It's got its flaws, which we'll go to now as to why I'd sell it. It's got sorry, I hit the microphone there. It's got a mic jack. It's got headphone. It's got a full-size HDMI. It's got, like I said, the USB-C that can not only power the camera, but you could also transfer the footage. It's got pretty much a DC adapter, so you can plug it in to wall, have it record all day. And it's got a mini XLR connection, so you can connect even higher quality audio, have different channels. I mean, a massive size touchscreen in the back when you're recording. Unfortunately, no viewfinder, but massive size touchscreen. I mean, I put a Metabone speed booster on here because it's a 4/3 size sensor. And with this speed booster, it almost acts like a full frame camera, and I've got a Canon lens on here, 35mm. When I press record, holy cow. I don't own a camera today that gives me an image that looks quite as nice as this camera. So why would I sell it? Simply because this camera does not have continuous autofocus, which, yeah, we don't always need all the time, but oh my gosh, when I'm recording with this camera, I have to make sure I'm absolutely in focus and don't move when I'm just a one-man shoot. When I'm recording others, it's just fine. But I do have an app that I use with a phone that I can actually focus on myself, make sure I'm focused, look at my monitor, whatever. Good. No flip screen. Battery life is abysmal. You can actually get a battery pack that you can install here, or add different V-mount battery setups and get it improve the battery life. So it's not something that can't be addressed. But out of the box, LPE6 batteries on this thing don't last you much more than half an hour, 45 minutes. Other flaw with it is that besides the flip screen, the screen not flipping out, it's also really hard to use in sunlight. Other than that, nothing else is wrong with this camera. Nothing. Build quality has never bothered me. It bothers most, but I have a cage on it most of the time, so it feels rock solid. And I've actually dropped this camera a couple times. I broke it once, but the way it fell, it should have broke. It was totally my fault. But I've also dropped it and have no scuffs on it. Actually, even when it broke, it had no scuffs because of the cage that I've got on it. So you definitely need a cage with it, and I'd sell that too if I sold a camera. And then that's it. That's kind of like the pros and the cons of this camera that I find, and why I'd sell it. Definitely is a camera that you can rig out. And one thing that I do want to mention, when it compares to most, this has a lot of limitations. The Blackmagic versus the other cameras that have like autofocus, can take pictures, can do all of this, in-body image stabilization. But the flaw that I've always found with that is that those that look at this camera and says, hey, these can do all these other stuff, and they took out all these features for the Blackmagic price is comparable to cheaper DSLR mirrorless cameras. And sure, even you can find mirrorless cameras or DSLR cameras that compete at that price bracket, but still can do a little bit more when it comes to convenient functionality, like I said, in-body image stabilization, like taking higher resolution photos, autofocus, things like that. But when you're using a cinema camera, which is what this is, most cinema cameras that you buy usually just come as a brick with nothing else. And then you have to build it out yourself to something amazing. Blackmagic designed a very inexpensive camera with most of what you would buy anyway added onto it, like a screen, so you don't have to buy an external monitor. You can, but you don't have to. Like all, at least traditional buttons that you would use or need, like the ability to attach all this media. It's great. It's a little great machine, purposely leaving out in-body image stabilization so that your sensor's not moving around when you're shooting something that's hectic, and you need that ability to just move your camera without potentially damaging your sensor because you're shaking it so often. Perfect. It is a perfect, affordable cinema camera, in my opinion. But I've already listed the pros and the cons. Let's see what others would buy it for or sell it for at this point, right? Did I click off of eBay? I think I clicked off of eBay. No, I'm still here. Okay. So eBay. Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. I have the 4K, not the 6K. So, and this is just Blackmagic design. 6K, 6K, 6K. Can I just choose the 4K here? And this is This was just Amazon. Okay. I'm in Amazon's website. I'm using Amazon first. I had immediately assumed that I was on eBay. But on Amazon's site, they don't have that filter for camera feature. So I'm going to click on this to see what all buying options are for the 4K. And used is around 1,500 US dollars, roughly, cheapest. Let's see what the 5. Oh, that's it. So around $1,500. Okay, let's go to eBay, which seems to be more realistic prices. And it comes up pretty quick. Type pocket. Okay, so the 4K 1300, 1295. These are new prices. New. 1,000 pre-owned 1250, 1240. It still sells for a pretty hefty price. This is sold already, so I'd say close to $1,000. I could probably sell it for. Let's tack it down to 900. So $900. That's what we'll go for. I've been going on so long. I feel like I've sold all my cameras. Ugh. I gotta watch that microphone. Sorry if I'm actually torturing you guys with this. So out of all my camera buying options, it seems that I'd have the best luck selling the Samsung with the lens. If I'm only selling camera bodies, the camera body that has the greatest return is definitely the Blackmagic, with the Canon 6D and the GH5 somewhere in the middle when it comes to that, around $800 to $900. So one final camera that I'm going to talk about, and then we're done. I promise. I've been talking for like over an hour, so thank you for hanging in with me. The final camera is the 5D Mark IV, the camera that you guys are looking at me through right now. So if you want to know the quality of the camera, there it is. Now I'm streaming this in 1080p, but what I'm actually doing is on the camera, it's 4K, 24 frames per second is the setting that I have right now. But because you only see me in 1080p, because my video card, like the card that I'm using, which is a Camlink USB, its limit is 60 frames per second in 1080p. But even if it was the 4K version of that card, my camera could only output in 1080p. So, but since it's coming down from a 4K to a 1080p screen, this is what you get. It's a 16:9, so that's why you see black bars above me and below me, is because it's actually a 17:9 screen. So it's a little wider than a traditional television. So it's using black bars in the top and the bottom. So when you're editing in post, of course, you can crop out the sides and make it so that you fill the whole screen. It's up to you. But for this stream, I just left it the way it is. So what made me buy the 5D Mark IV? Here's what it has. It was released in 2016. And the 5D Mark IV excited me because I already owned this Canon 6D and I liked the Canon color science. I heard all about the ability for its dual pixel autofocus, and it's 1080p at 60 frames per second, 720p at 120 frames per second. But those extra little bit of slow-mo in 1080p I was excited for. I had no 120 frames per second, but it's good enough. And I already had the Samsung NX1 with 120 frames per second already, and if I needed 120 frames per second, I'd just use the NX1. It also had dual card slots, full frame camera, and it was just kind of like the big brother to my 6D, so that's what initially made me get it. The 4K was and is a heavy file with its MJPEG format. But I had felt that if I get one or two fast enough cards, how often would I really need to record 4K? And if I really did need it, I could just use my Samsung NX1 to record 4K because the 4K had less of a crop. I just wanted an amazing photography camera that can do amazing video as well. And that has been my 5D Mark IV. But it wasn't initially exciting, at least for the 4K, because of its horrible compression for 4K and the big file sizes. And then time passed. And then before I knew it, I switched my main camera from NX1 to the Canon 5D Mark IV as my main camera for this YouTube channel. Its autofocus never lost me when it came to tracking my face, where the NX1 would get distracted when I would move my hands, which sometimes is useful, especially if you're showing products. Like the fact that it would catch the product and then it would catch me back on me. That's what I love the NX1 for. But there, most of the time, I speak with my hands. I didn't want the camera to lose me because I talk with my hands. But notice how my hands, even though they're moving all over the frame, it doesn't distract the camera from staying focused right here. And if I move, it'll refocus. But then I come back, focus is back on me. No problem. This was a feature that made me absolutely fall for the Canon 5D. But then with a later upgrade, they added Canon C-Log, which made full use of the 12 stops of dynamic range that you can possibly get off the camera, which expanded my ability to actually record specific performances that I used to record that needed that dynamic range, especially with stage performances when you have harsh lights on the people in the front and people in the back aren't lit as well, but you need to capture them and their detail. This camera was knocking it out of the park when it came to getting everybody from the front who are well lit to the back. That and the Panasonic did it too with V-Log, so amazing. And its versatility. It's just, and it's built like a tank, so I could just take it anywhere. And I really felt like a pro. And the lens compatibility, I love EF lens mounts. I have so many EF lenses. All of that was reason to keep it. But why would I want to sell it? Why would I want to sell the 5D Mark IV? Well, that is because and this is the biggest reason, I absolutely love the 5D Mark IV. But it's got no flip screen. It's got that archaic codec of MJPEG, which, like I said, 500 megabits per second, which if you're looking for megabytes per second, that's around like 65 megabytes per second that it's throwing on your card. So if you don't have a fast enough CF card or an SD card slot, then it's going to stop recording. So like I said, no flip screen, no in-body image stabilization, which is useful. It's heavy, so for vlogging, it's great for vlogging when you want to take it with you and stuff, but it's so heavy. And that's really it, because I do love the camera, but those flaws have been a little bit of a nuisance. One last very important flaw. When you're recording 4K, the full frame sensor is not used. Like, let's say, let me look at the screen. Let's say this was a full frame sensor. When you record 4K, it crops in about this much, 1.74 times. So I'm cropped in right now. So it still doesn't look bad. I do have some bokeh off of this lens that I'm using, but you get better results if you can use the full frame, and you can't. So that type of crop is actually a more harsh crop than my APS-C sensor on my 5D, my NX1. So my NX1 is simulating a bigger sensor than my 5D Mark IV. And because of that crop, it makes it very hard to vlog. I actually bought a Tokina 11 to 20 millimeter f2.8 lens that is only for APS-C EF cameras, like the 7D like the 80D. But it has an EF mount, thankfully, so I can still hook it up on the 5D Mark IV, which when I use that, I can vlog comfortably in 4K and not have an issue. Thank goodness. But I had to go that wide just to be able to vlog with the camera, which is, shouldn't have to do that, right? I wish I could take full advantage of the full sensor, which is that's where the RF comes in. I mean the R5. I'm saying RF. The R5, due to be released, similar features, dual card slots. It was almost called the next 5D. It's almost like an upgrade to this camera, but it has 120 frames per second 4K. It's got 8K at 30 frames per second, dual pixel autofocus in all modes. I detect autofocus. It's got C-Log. It has a flip screen. It's got a smaller body. It's got lens compatibility with the RF mounts and EF, because if you use an adapter, you could use all the EF glass. You could record RAW. It does it all. No crop either. So I can record 4K or 8K with no crop, and I don't need to use that lens, that cropped lens. I could use a better lens and get better results. So that's why I would want to sell my trusted, ever so reliable 5D Mark IV. And yes, I love the Canon family, just like I do like Panasonic, I do like Samsung, I do love Blackmagic, but I'd sell it only because I'm going from Canon to Canon, so I won't feel like I'm losing a camera. Whereas if I sell a Panasonic, the Samsung, it would feel like I'm losing a camera. And even the 6D, it's not the same style, so I almost feel like I'd be losing a camera, but the 5D is like one for one. But then having a 5D and then the R5, why not, right? But with the 5D, I could potentially get more money. And that's kind of what I'm assuming here. So actually, let's get to the nitty gritty, to the point of this, and let's look at what we can get with this last camera. So here we go. So we're on, this is eBay right now. I opened up the wrong screen. Hang on. So on eBay, I'm going to put 5D Mark IV. Let's see. I'm looking to make sure it's just this camera. It's not giving me Canon only. Anyway, 5D Mark IV, $1,700, $1,700, $1,900, $1,600, $2,600. I'm assuming this is new. Pre-owned, $2,850. 1969. This is all sold, but it doesn't matter if it's sold or not. I want to see what items sold for. 1830. And this is just the body. High shutter count. Buy it now. Pre-owned. 1440. It seems, and my Canon 5D Mark IV is in pristine condition. Works great. Comes with Canon C-Log, which none of these are mentioning. So, but I'd say I could probably get a good $1,500 just for the camera body itself, which is a pretty good deal. That's a pretty damn good deal. That's higher than any of the other cameras that I showed you guys here. So 5D Mark IV, if you got one and are looking to let it go, it probably now's the time, because as new cameras come out, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to sell it at such a high price. But then again, the Samsung NX1 originally sold for $1,500. Now I've seen prices where it's over $2,000 brand new. It's just weird. So looking at Amazon, hit just Canon only. 5D Mark IV. These are new prices here. So what I'm actually going to do is actually going to click on one and see like all buying options. See if there's like different buying options. Buy used. Other sellers on Amazon 2,700, but if I buy used, are there others? No. I guess it's not sure. You know how sometimes Amazon shows you like see all buying options and then you can buy used. So as expected, Amazon is a bit more expensive with the 5D Mark IV, putting it at well over $2,000. So it seems that eBay is a bit more reliable when it comes to this. So that's all my cameras. It seems first place goes to the 5D Mark IV. Second place, if I sold it with the lens, would be the Samsung NX1. If not, second place would be the GH5. So if we're taking apples to apples, first place, Canon 5D Mark IV. Second place, GH5. Third place was, if I'm not mistaken, the Canon 6D. Fourth place was the Samsung NX1. And that's because it's probably a smaller sensor and it's like harder to find like lenses for and stuff like that. So that would make it a little bit more difficult. When and if I decide to sell one of these cameras, I'll let you know. And if I decide to keep them all, I'll let you know what I did to get the R5, because it's definitely got to come up. And we'll see what happens. And selling a camera has been necessary because it's been harder to work on video projects to earn the income with cameras to get more due to the current situation, as we all know. But that's all I got to say. Thank you for really sticking with me throughout this whole stream. I went on for like well over an hour. But as always, you can definitely leave me some comments if you catch this in post. I appreciate everyone who joined this stream. As always, like, share, please share. I'm trying to grow as much as possible on YouTube, and it's kind of hard. I'm here late at night. It's 11 p.m. I gotta work tomorrow very early, but I'm still like trying to hustle, even in this type of environment. Like just trying to hustle, trying to grow the dream of making it big, and that is mostly because of people like you watching. And if you watch this video, and definitely watch the whole thing, it's definitely because of you that I feel like we're growing the community. And just by liking, especially by liking and commenting, that helps my channel a lot. And if you subscribe, whenever I say you can make my day if you subscribe today, you honestly do. I'm like, every time it goes up by one, like I'm buying myself a cup of coffee. Well, not now, but getting a coffee or getting like having a little treat or treating myself to just a moment of happiness because I actually earned another subscription from you guys, and you're all real people to me. Unlike those numbers like to other creators. To me, every single person who comments, who writes, who subscribes matters, and I want to make sure that I give you guys the type of content that you need and that you want to see. And if you're here to see me, then here I am. Anyway, that's all I got to say before I continue to embarrass myself. Oh, and let me know if you like this whole setup and this show idea. Again, experimenting, but this has been like one of my favorite kind of layouts. Let me know if you like it. And as always, you can make my day if you subscribe today. You know I mean it. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you guys later.